It was the most exclusive part of La Nena, entirely at the service of Brianese and the business consortiums and cabals that he controlled. I jutted my chin in Elenia and Nicola's direction. Brianese shook his head. No, they'll be going home. I have an appointment with 3 developers. Should I tell Nicoletta to come? I feel sure that the gentleman would appreciate the gesture. I circled back behind the bar and pulled open a drawer. And there was a cell phone that I use only when I'm calling her. Nicoletta Rizardi was an old friend. She was one of the first people I met when I first moved to the Veneto. We'd even been lovers for a short while. A tall, slender drink of water with a nice big pair of milky white boobs. She'd been divorced for years and was a die-hard smoker. She loved flashy, expensive scarves, which she wore constantly and with considerable flair. She had worked in the sector of high-end fashion, strictly counterfeits. Then came the wave of competition in that field from African immigrant street vendors, selling the same articles as she was, but at half the price. She was forced to move into a new field and settle for a position repping mid-market intimate apparel. Her income dropped accordingly, and she'd been scraping by until I approached her with a proposal to go into business with me in a certain endeavor that quickly proved to be a brilliant opportunity and a steady source of income for both of us. One night when I was talking with Brianese, I had the brainstorm. The counselor was complaining about the fact that in this country, public figures no longer enjoyed freedom or any right to privacy. Gossip had become the Italian national sport, and no politician could afford the risk anymore of having a little fun on the side because of the danger of winding up as fodder for the press. An innocent dalliance could easily turn into the epitaph of a career. Maybe not in Lombardy or Rome, where members of parliament caught dabbling in extramarital sex or snorting lines of cocaine were exonerated by their fellow politicos as victims of the pressure cooker life they led, unwillingly separated from their families. Here in the Veneto, however, there was just one simple rule. Do whatever you want, but don't get caught or it's curtains. The real problem came with the call girls themselves. They had become an integral part of the way business was conducted, but they constantly proved to be deeply unreliable. These days, no one dreamed of obtaining a contract of any size, even for a miserable traffic circle, without kicking in a percentage in kind. Corruption had evolved, and those who were willing to settle for cash payments were considered two-bit operators. Now, even wives and offspring were eager to grab a little something for themselves when possible. New wallpaper for the house or a Japanese sports car. Everybody seemed to want an extra piece of bakshish, a gift to console themselves over the fact that they'd become corrupt. But the call girls had become ground zero for investigating magistrates and investigative journalists, and they were such bird brains that they seemed incapable of keeping their mouths shut. No matter how bad things got, the call girls were always willing to appear on a talk show to make matters worse. Brianese was right, several times over. I'd worked for a while in a lap dance club, and I know a thing or two about the mindset you find in girls who are willing to accept the transaction. So I took advantage of my experience and put together a small but extremely reliable network of prostitutes under the guise of an escort service. I went to work for Brianese and his friends. Never more than 4 girls at a time, exclusively foreigners who knew nobody and were completely ignorant about the city, and we replaced them after exactly 6 months. Venezuelans, Argentines, and Brazilians with European features, preferably of Italian descent, the offspring of immigrants, and always one Chinese girl for that exotic touch. The hard part about the Chinese girl was finding one who was even halfway presentable. I had a contact in Prado, but he had nothing to show me but girls they were sending to work out of apartments. The problem was this. The Chinese girls assigned as sex workers were precisely those who couldn't keep pace with production in the sweatshops, the ones who could no longer earn their keep. In other words, all I had to choose from was an array of 22-year-old girls with chapped, calloused hands who were so beaten down it would have taken a couple of months of rest and relaxation to get them into any kind of shape to spread their legs with at least a hint of a smile on their lips. I always found myself struggling to imagine them nicely made up, their hair done properly by a professional hairdresser, and decently dressed. In other words, it was a thankless task, but these days you couldn't hope to operate a first-class escort service without at least one Chinese girl. They helped to put the most demanding clients at their ease, and they were perfect for clients who had a hard time expressing their desires. Nicoletta described the Chinese girls as the dolls that Italian males grew up wishing they could play with. That was true only in part. Actually, they were just sex slaves with long